here, because President Trump has been making some, and listen, I got to caveat this by saying some strange things. And I know you're like, wait, everything he says is strange. No, there's some new level of strange going on here that's almost within the context of a single soundbite contradictory. Let's start out, first of all, by saying that he said, this was on Air Force One last night, that basically the war is already over. So I don't need to continue it on because we've already won.
We have many ways we can win, but we've already won militarily. They have very little. They have very little left, and they want to make a deal so badly. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem.
So what does that even mean, man? I don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. And if you say you've won militarily and you don't want to go back, as you're going to see in the next soundbite I have from a different interview, also yesterday, then you're going to say, well, then where does that even leave? Logically, how can we have already won the war? I don't know if they're going to make a deal. I don't know if I want to make a deal. What does that leave, Scott?
Well, it's really tough, Danny, to go by anything that Trump says because, as you note here, he's just all over the place. The big headline, I'm not sure if this is the same soundbite you're referring to for next, but the one that I know from yesterday was him saying that I guess the MOU is dead. But it was in response to a reporter's question, is it dead? And then you could tell he decides what to say right there. This is not like they decided earlier, okay, are we changing the policy and the MOU is officially dead? So instead, he just kind of riffs. They're like, nah, seems dead to me, like far as I can tell or something. And then the world goes crazy over that. The MOU is dead. The war's back on. But then as you've covered on your show, as well or better than anyone, he doesn't have any military options in Iran. And even, the Financial Times had that great special about how their missile launchers and missile stores are just fine. And they're just buried deep under granite, like their nuclear facilities, and are very hard to destroy. And we have not defeated them, in fact, right? Trump especially always brings up the same measure. We destroyed their Navy and their Air Force. Yeah, that they weren't fighting with. The whole question was their intermediate, medium, short, medium, and intermediate range missile force. And that is perfectly capable. Yeah, so they can still reach out and touch someone all up and down the Gulf and wherever they want in the region, as they proved over the last couple of days. So, but then, so what are we to read from his statements about what he means about the deal? I think, don't shoot me, take that to mean that the talks are still on. What choice does he have? He already lost. When he called ceasefire on April the 8th, that was just after he was saying, I'm going to obliterate their entire civilization and all that, because essentially he'd run out of good military targets that they could do anything about. And it hadn't worked, right? You can't win a war from the air. Strategic bombing doesn't work. That's why they resorted to all the terror bombing in the Second World War, is because no matter how many times they bombed the train station, it didn't make a difference. And so same thing here. They're trying to figure out how to force them to capitulate. Well, we could firebomb them like Tokyo or just call it off, because nothing that we're doing here is working. We're out of options, and they still have missiles, and we're running out of interceptors. They're able to hit all of our bases, light up all of our assets all up and down the region, and economic targets all up and down the Gulf. That's why he called it quits in April. And so this whole time really should probably be mostly regarded as, our view of his theatrical attempt to somehow save face while losing this war. But when they say restart it, all the hawks can cry, restart it. Well, as you already know, you do the thought experiments, none of them play out. We are not sending in the entire Army and Marine Corps. We're not conscripting 10 million men and doing a D-Day level invasion of Persia like World War II. The president just does not have the political capital to do any such thing. It's just, forget that is not happening. And if we send all of our Air Force and all of our Navy planes to hit as many targets as they can, like with that level of effort, we start losing them, right? They start getting shot out of the sky. They already proved that they can shoot down our F-35s. They can certainly shoot down anything else if we get them anywhere closer than standoff ranges.
And Scott, let me just kind of throw in this, because I want to, since you just mentioned it, one thing I want to throw out there, because I hadn't really said this out loud even on my own show here. This idea that if you did mobilize and got 10 million people, because I think we had 12 million during the height of World War II. If you did that kind of thing and you had a D-Day style, all right, we're just going to plow through and we're going to do the same thing we did there. And we're going to, just like we rolled up to Berlin or however far we ended up getting there, we'll do that same thing there. That would never happen, because when we invaded Normandy, it was basically hedgerows and plains. It was wide open all the way through to Paris. I mean, the whole thing going up there. This is mountains all the way through. It would be like trying to go into like Italy, in the boot of Italy, which was the most catastrophic, chewed up personnel that you could have in 1943, if I'm not mistaken, when we started that one, or maybe no, it was also 1944 when we started going up. All you have is all of those mountains here. We would never make it through. You understand what I'm saying? I don't care how many millions of men you have, they would be chewed up in there, because the Iranian side, all the advantages go to the defender, and because you have to go through these channels and you have the high ground obviously all over the place. So even that is not an actual option.
Right. So we have either H-bombs or sit down and negotiate a way to somehow normalize the new regime. But the problem is, of course, it's a huge step down for the American empire and 3 or 4 steps up for Iran's power and influence in the region. And I don't think we know how all it's going to shake out. Maybe UAE will come hide behind America's skirt even more than before. Or maybe they're going to start sending all their guys to Tehran to negotiate and figure out a new order of things in the world, recognizing that Iran and not the United States of America is the unquestioned regional hegemon now, that they control the Strait of Hormuz the same way that many other straits in the world are controlled by sovereigns. It's not going to be treated as international waters anymore. And those are just the facts of life. Donald Trump called his own bluff. And the real tragedy of this whole thing is that we can't just call no confidence in the prime minister and put a new guy in there. We're stuck with the same fool who did this. And by the way, he said, maybe it was foolish. He said that, his own words, foolish, to launch this war. So we're stuck with the same guy who did the foolish thing to be the one who has to figure out a way out of the war, but in a way that's still good for him, and which is virtually impossible. So that's what we're seeing here, of course. And of course, also there's the Israelis in Lebanon who, along with, the Iranians and the Americans fighting over the Strait, are these huge wild cards in the whole process. And we haven't even gotten to what's really going to happen to their nuclear program. How long of a freeze of their enrichment program are they really going to accept, or a freeze before they rebuild their conversion facility and get back to, making nuclear material for their civilian program, et cetera, and all that. All that still remains to be worked out. And all that is extremely difficult unless Donald Trump is, again, willing to just go right back to where Obama was, which is, geez, I guess we have to accept enrichment, because what are we going to do about it? We can't do anything about it. So fine, just don't make a bomb and you can have your civilian program, which is right where we were before anyway.
Yeah, that was obviously have been the least costly way for us, and would still have kept the facade that we are the dominant military power in the world and nobody else is even close, as Trump used to say.